Coming up on Marriage Today with Jimmy and Karen.
I fear that you're always going to talk to me like this. I fear that you're always going to be disconnected and you're never going to care about me, so I react. I fear being controlled, so I take control. I fear being disrespected, so I become sarcastic. I fear something going on, and so I then, through fear, I react, and that makes you hurt now. When we married, I didn't realize that Karen and I were both full of fear. I was fearful of failure and also admitting my weaknesses.
And I was fearful of rejection and not being valued. More than anything else, fear can keep us from intimacy and satisfaction in marriage.
Today we're going to be talking about how to overcome fear and how to return to intimacy. When God walked up and Adam said to him, I was fearful because I was naked, God asked Adam a question. Who told you you were naked? And God never asked a question to get the answer. God asked a question to give us an answer. The devil told you you were naked. Because once fear comes into us, he uses fear as a control mechanism to control our behavior and destroy our lives. 2 Timothy 1:7, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and power and of a sound mind. You can't have intimacy in marriage when you're being controlled by fear. When Karen and I got married, we were full of fear. I mean, I was full of fear. I tried to act like I wasn't full of fear, but I was full of fear. Fear of rejection, which I believe is every person's number one fear. Love is our greatest need. Rejection is our greatest fear. I feared failure, exposure, weakness, dishonor, deprivation, all of those things. I was full of fear. Now, I masked my fear with a macho, kind of a chauvinistic attitude, but I was completely full of it. Karen had the fear of rejection, disconnection, being devalued, failure, abuse, so on and so forth. So let me talk for just a minute about the 4 curses of fear. Now, you need to remember these. You might want to write these down. The 4 curses of fear. What fear does when it comes into our life that is so destructive. Because remember, God hasn't given us the spirit of fear. God doesn't control us through fear. When fear comes into our lives, 100% of the time, it's from the devil and it came to destroy. God has given us power and love and a sound mind. He does not use fear to control us. Here are the 4 curses of fear. Number 1 is fear makes us selfish. When you are living in fear, you're not thinking about other people, except as it relates to fear. You walk into this room, you're fearful of, being ridiculed or fearful of not looking good. You're not aware of other people, you're just aware of yourself. That's what fear does. 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. I cannot love Karen the way that I should when fear is the filter by which I see Karen. Because it causes me to be selfish. I can't think about her purely. I can't meet her needs purely when my motivation is a motivation of fear. Number 2, curse of fear is it makes us sinful. It causes us to do things that are sinful and justify them. A lot of marriage counseling is spent listening to people talk about what they did wrong and justifying it by what their spouse did wrong or based on their fears. Karen and I were involved in a counseling situation. It's been probably 20 years ago. One of the worst situations we've ever been involved in. And there was abuse involved in this particular situation. The husband was abusive. And so we got involved in this situation, and we knew this couple. They were a couple that we went to church with, and we thought a lot of them. And we're really shocked at how their situation had gotten so bad. So we sit down with the husband and wife, and we talked about what is the issue that created this bizarre behavior and this abuse and all of that. So we talked and we talked and we talked, and they talked about stuff and they talked about stuff. Finally, we got down to what caused the husband to become abusive. And what it was that his wife wouldn't go to the doctor. She had a physical problem. She had told him about the physical problem, and he said to his wife, I want you to go to the doctor, and I want you to get that checked out. And she said, I'm just going to pray about it. I don't think it's that serious. And he said, I want you to go to the doctor. when this whole issue was resolved and when it broke, is this man started sobbing. And he said, I don't want my wife to die. I don't want my wife to die. I just want her to go to the doctor. And he just started sobbing. This is a big, strong, virile man. And he just breaks down sobbing. And the entire issue that caused him to become so abusive toward her was the fear that she was going to die of this illness. Fear drove him to do things that were wrong, but he justified it because this fear was so overwhelming in his life. And of course, you can't justify sin, but fear causes you to sin. Number 3, curse of fear is it causes us to say damaging and negative words. Sarcastic were some of the worst things I've ever said to Karen. I said to her when I was full of fear. She would touch a fear in my life, or some fear was going on in my life, and I would say something in response to her. Adam and Eve, when Adam was feeling fearful, God walked up to Adam and said, Adam, what is this thing that you've done? And Adam said, it's the woman's fault. Because he feared judgment from God, he then blamed it on Eve. Do you think that helped their relationship at all? 3 years later, you blamed me when God walked up. He did, because of fear. We say things that are negative. Number 4, and this is the big one, fear causes you to do what makes your fears come true. Fear, being controlled by fear, doesn't cause you to avoid your fears. Being controlled by fear guarantees that you'll live the rest of your life experiencing your fears. It makes you stupid. It really does. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. Fear is compared to its opposite. There's fear, and then there's sound thinking. When you're being controlled by thinking, it's a mild form of insanity. It can cause us to do crazy things, and we think that we're right, but it's not right. Gary Smalley, in his book, The DNA of Relationships, he talks about the fear dance that couples get into that is so dangerous in their relationship. And his premise in there is we are all dealing with core fears. And he's right. Every person is dealing with core fears. Women's core fears mostly relate to disconnectedness, not being heard or being valued, and losing love and appreciation. Most women deal with those core fears. Most men deal with core fears of helplessness, being controlled, failure, disrespect, those kinds of things. And in his book, he talks about the steps in the fear dance. There are 4 steps in the fear dance that we get into in marriage. And they are, I hurt, I want, I fear, I react. I hurt, I want, I fear, I react. Those are the 4 steps in the fear dance. And then, when I make my steps, you then hurt, you then want, you then fear, you then react, and we go back and forth. I'm hurting because there's something in my life that I'm in need of, and fear is down there grinding. I'm in need of financial security. I'm in need of affirmation. I'm in need to know that my life matters. I'm in need of love and attention or getting my needs met or whatever. And underneath the need that I have, there's this fear grinding and causing this hurt, and so I want satisfaction. I want this fear to go away, and so what I do is I may distract myself through eating or drinking or through sex or through work or through children or something like that. But ultimately this thought comes into my mind. If only my spouse was different, my problems would go away. I'm hurting and I want a solution. And there's this thought in my mind that just said, if you were better, I wouldn't be hurting like this. And so I fear. I fear that you're never going to change. I fear that you're not going to get it. I fear that you're always going to talk to me like this. I fear that you're always going to be disconnected and you're never going to care about me, so I react. I fear being controlled, so I take control. I fear being disrespected, so I become sarcastic. I fear something going on, and so I then, through fear, I react, and that makes you hurt now. Now I've taken my hurt and I've transferred it over to you, and now you begin to hurt, and you begin to want a solution, and you begin to fear, and you begin to react, and it touches me, and then we get into the fear dance. one of my friends is a counselor, and he was talking about this issue in his marriage. And so he told me this story about one of the worst fights his wife and he ever got into. And he was at work one day, and it was, getting toward going home time. And right when he was about to leave, he told his wife he'd be home at a certain time. Some people came into his office, and it was a devastatingly difficult situation. It wasn't your run-of-the-mill situation. It was a family that had just gone through a horrible circumstance. And they walked in and said to him, "Please help us." And so, trying to be a good minister and a good counselor, he stayed and helped them. So he got in his car, and he was on his way home, and he called his wife. Knew he was late, but he was late because of a virtuous situation that he was involved in. So he picked up the telephone, called his wife, and when he called his wife, what he heard on the other end of the line was, where have you been? Don't you know that I've got supper ready? And she just began to go off on him like this. And so he hurt his feelings because he thought, hey, I've been helping some people who are devastated, and rather than you listening to what I have to say and understanding that these people are devastated, and I've been there for several hours trying to help this family, get through something, and I helped them, and I averted a death. The circumstance that he was involved with averted a death. And rather than you listening to me and understanding what I've done, you're sitting here railing on me. And so they get into this horrible fight. And he gets home and the fight just escalates. He gets out of the car and he's feeling devalued and dishonored and misunderstood. And she's feeling like she's just devalued and not respected and whatever like that. And when they get down to the core of the argument, she fears that he is going to disconnect from her and the children because she's already had that concern that he's working too much. And she fears that he is going to absorb himself in work and lose connection with her and the children. So all those several hours that were going by without a phone call, she was hurting. And she wanted a solution to her hurt because this fear is grinding on the inside of her that says, I'm losing my husband. I'm losing connection with my husband. And he hasn't called me. And I can't believe he's so insensitive. And then the fear comes that my husband's going to become this great counselor and I'm going to sit at home with the kids and he's not going to care about me and us any longer. And then she begins to react. He calls her on the telephone. It's like, where have you been? Why don't you get, rather than being sensitive. And when she talks to him, it's, you think I'm a bad man, huh? You think I'm just a jerk that would sit up at the office for 3 hours without calling my wife? You think that I'm that kind of a man? I haven't been sitting up in my office with my feet up on my desk. I have been averting a death. Maybe you could ask me about what I've been involved with because I've been involved in a serious situation and I don't need this kind of behavior from you. So he has this hurt going on in him now, this grinding fear that my wife doesn't support me and she's not going to support me. And every time I try to do something right, she's going to be the first person I've got on my back. Rather than being my biggest fan, now she's become my biggest adversary. And I'm going to have to fight her to do what God's called me to do with my life. And she believes that I'm a bad man. And she's talking to me like I'm a bad man. And when they get down to the core of the fight, it's a fear dance. And what both of them did is reach out and touch the core fear in the other person. And the fight is on. And we all do it. We all have core fears in our lives. And those fears are the control mechanism that the devil uses to get us to act sinful and to act selfish and to say and do damaging things. The devil implanted fear into Adam and he didn't even know where it came from. God walks up. I was fearful because I was naked. Who told you that you were naked? I created you naked, son. I wouldn't be the one making you feel fearful of the way that I created you. Where did this fear come from? It didn't come from me. And I'm saying to all of us, when you are experiencing fear, it's a normal thing that all of us experience, and it's the most dangerous thing that can happen in your relationship when you give into it. And for many, many of us, we live our lives in fear and we live our marriages in a fear dance. And we've got to get out of that fear dance if we're going to be able to experience intimacy and have the marriage that God wants us to have. I want you to know that you can have a marriage that is intimate, where you are enjoying each other and you're really able to be close on the inside and to have the intimacy that everybody dreams of when they get married. It eludes so many of us, but you can have an intimate relationship and take away the fear and the anger and all the issues that inhibit intimacy in marriage. And we want to get you this. What you saw on today's program is just a very small part of a 5-part CD series and a DVD series that's called Return to Intimacy, a full seminar telling you how to have an intimate marriage. And right now, for your gift of any amount to support Marriage Today, we want to send you the full CD series for your gift of any amount. Now, this is an unusual offer for us because normally for a gift of any amount, we offer a book or something like that, not a complete seminar series. And so this is a really special offer, but we want to say thank you for supporting Marriage Today. You help us to take this important message across America and around the world and also back to you. And so as our thank you for your support financially, we want to send you this 5-part CD series. Also right now, for your gift of $90 or more, we want to send you the full DVD series of Return to Intimacy along with our special one devotional book. This is the nicest book that we've ever published, and it's devotionals for you to sit down, daily, weekly, monthly, however often, you and your spouse, and you just sit down and you have a date night, you have a special devotional to help you grow in your marriage. And so these special resources, the CD, the DVD, the one devotional book, we want to get these to you to bless you, but also as a thank you for supporting us here at Marriage Today. And here's how you can get it.
Regardless of your past, you can return to intimacy. In this power-packed teaching series, Jimmy Evans shares the 4 elements of intimacy, how to resolve conflict, the most common issues that destroy marriages, and the secret to restoring and staying in love.
Intimacy means on the inside we're close. It also means complete mutual awareness. It means I know you.
For your gift of any amount, we'll send you the entire 5-part Return to Intimacy series on CD. For your gift of $90 or more, we'll send you the 5-part series on DVD plus the one devotional book, a 52-week couples devotion guide. Embark on a journey that will dramatically increase the intimacy in your relationship like you've never experienced. Whatever your situation, you can return to intimacy.
Well, this program today is on the issue of fear, disarming destructive fear. And as I was saying in the teaching, this is something that all of us deal with. And Karen, you had a real big problem in this area. And not really, we both did. And when we got married, we said this at the beginning of the program, is, I had the fear of rejection. And I covered it up by kind of a macho attitude. But I remember there were so many times early in our marriage that what provoked me about anything that you said and did was fear. It touched on that fear of I was going to fail. And the 2 biggest fears that I had were the fear of rejection, the fear of failure. And so whenever you would say something to me or do something that touched on that fear, well, then I went off and I began to pursue you.
And of course, since we both had the fear, we weren't thinking, if I say that, it's going to touch that. I think back on how I was so young and so insecure and had so much self-hate that when, we would have our arguments or our, all these things that we'd go through, I wasn't thinking I'm fearful. I wasn't thinking, I'm so scared. I'm going to get get my gun license and know how to shoot it. I wasn't
and
thinking.
she recently got her gun license, so now I know where mine is now.
But we both came into the marriage with a lot of rejection. And so I think what was with myself is because I had nothing to prop myself up with. Right. I depended on you to do that for me.
That's right.
And so like when we were, when I was being raised, I was so rejected already that when we met and you accepted me and you loved me and it was so wonderful, and then we started getting into these arguments, it's like, whoa, what's happening? And it just made me just go even farther inside. I'm backing off, and you'd see that as, resistance, and for me it was a fear. It's like we did it different. It wasn't the same.
Absolutely. Well, we want to talk about the steps to being set free from fear, in your life and especially in your marriage, because I really do believe that a lot of our worst fights come from fear. I know it's true of us and it's true of everyone that we know, basically. But the first is to be honest about your fear. Now, and this is the hard part, because I was macho. And I didn't want to reveal my weaknesses to you by saying, when we were fighting or something, well, Karen, you're just really touching my fears or something like that. You're like, well, whatever. But it was the truth, and the truth makes you free. And the truth of the matter is that as men and women, we both have hurts from our past. Mm-hmm. We both have insecurities and issues in our lives that have to be resolved for us to have the marriage that we're supposed to have. And so there comes a point in time, if we're going to resolve the conflict, that we have to get to the core issue. And the core issue is, when you say that, mm-hmm. when you do that, it makes me feel afraid. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily your fault. It may be something in me that's wrong, but that makes me feel afraid. And when you draw those drapes in your relationship and you begin to talk that way, what happens is it disarms. The devil works in darkness. Mm-hmm. And anything that's in the darkness, he has the power over. But when you open the drapes and say, I have fear, then you can begin to deal with the real issue, because the real issue is fear.
Well, and I think with your personality, you were, like you're saying, a man, so macho, and they have to be the, show themselves. And so, and so you would portray yourself that way. You would come at us, come at me with that. Yeah. You better say, you better do, and you said this and you did this. And
I don't like the way you characterize that. You're not doing it right.
Yes, I am. And then, but we would have those arguments, and I'll never forget when we started figuring out how to do this. It was like so freeing to me when you just kind of humbly came and said, it really just hurts my feelings. Yeah. And I can relate to that. As a woman, I think it's so freeing for a woman just to hear a man say, it just hurts. Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, I don't want to hurt you. Yeah. Instead of this constant, you do it my way or else, and I think the honesty is huge.
Well, the first thing is to just bring it into the light and say, I'm not saying this is your fault, but it's making me feel fearful when you do this and this and this. The second thing is taking responsibility for your behavior. Because another thing, in other words, I could say to you, well, Karen, when you say that makes me feel afraid of rejection or failure, and you're trying to do that. You're trying to hurt mm-hmm. me, and you're the problem. And all I'm doing is I may be honest, but I'm not taking responsibility for my own behavior. I've got to take responsibility and say, I've got fear, but it could be, that this is just insecurity based, and I'm sorry. Because when I feel that way, I don't talk to you right, I don't do right. And when I'm honest and take responsibility for my behavior, when one spouse does it, it's great. When both spouses do it, it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And it really brings freedom in the relationship. We hope this is helpful to you because, every person experiences the same, every couple experiences, basically the same things in marriage. We experience anger and fear and things like that. And we hope this teaching has been helpful to you today. What we want for you is for you to have the marriage of your dreams. And we have a resource called our Dream Marriage Library that we send to a special group of people every month who are our rock solid partners. And these are people that help us every month by giving to the ministry. We have several different levels of giving, and for that you receive a resource called our Dream Marriage Library. It is continuing education for your marriage so that every month you don't have to go buy it, you don't have to go find it. It comes to you every month electronically, and you can also get it physically. But a teaching, it's the best of our marriage teachings, and also my teachings and sermons and things like that for a continuing education for your marriage. We want you to become a partner with this ministry, and here's how you can do it.
Marriage. Family. This is the foundation of our society. But this foundation is under attack. Across the country and across the street, marriages are crumbling. Young men and women are questioning the value and purpose of marriage, and children are suffering the heartache of divorce. But regardless of how dark, how difficult it may seem, with the right teaching, the right training, the right commitment, every marriage has a 100% chance of success. Join us by becoming a rock-solid partner today. Together, we can help shape the future of marriage around the world. For $14, $28, or $56 per month, you can get the tools you need to succeed in marriage, including online access to the Dream Marriage Library, CD and DVD lessons shipped to your door, and exclusive partner perks. Become a rock-solid partner today.
Well, the subject of today's program is fear, is disarming destructive fear in our marriages. And the whole premise of this program is that, fear causes, our own fears cause us to react the way we do a lot of times to our spouse, which creates anger and fighting and division and things like that. And this was true in our relationship. But let's talk for just a minute, Karen, about what a person can do to help their spouse. In other words, like in our marriage, if you listen to this program and you realize, I may be touching my spouse's fears, what can they do?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I honestly, what you and I would do is when we're not having our arguments, we would sit and talk.
Right.
And we just, explore each other. Go, tell me about your day. What's going on? How's it going with the kids? How are your relationships? Because what you and I would find is a lot of your fears were triggered from things that you were feeling the stress of outside the home.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's work or, just finances. And then mine was because, as a young mother, I had the fear of failing as a parent. You have a fear of failing as a friend, how you look to other people. And so, those are my insecurities that I would carry into the relationship with you and you'd carry in with me. Yeah. And, the more you sit down when you're not angry or you're not having those issues and just kind of find out what's going on with your spouse and then, pray for each other, right. And start having agreements of when I feel that, I'm going to stop and say, okay, I'm feeling this, help me not feel it. Let's walk through this and just be honest. If it takes practice and it takes hard work, but it's so worth it in the end.
Yeah, and I think too, Karen, there are certain fears that women have and there are certain fears that men have. I think that, and this is generally true, and there can be exceptions to this, but generally women fear disconnection and being devalued. Women, for many centuries, women have been disrespected in marriage and in society in general. And so I know for you, when a man is talking, we're just sitting there talking, but what you could be fearing is I'm disconnecting and I'm not valuing the way you should, or valuing you the way I should. But for a lot of men, we fear rejection and failure, and being dishonored. Those are our main fears. So you can pretty much predict to a certain level what your spouse's fears are, but the most important thing is you can be free from this type of fear and you can have the marriage of your dreams. We are so glad that you joined us today. We really hope that this program has been a blessing to you. And our program comes back to you regularly on this network or on this station. Also, we have MarriageToday.com where we have all of our programming and resources there archived for you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching Marriage Today with Jimmy and Karen. Support Marriage Today with your best gift and receive the series Return to Intimacy. Looking for your next great book? Start reading instantly with Marriage Today's ebooks, now available online. Happy, happy love will supercharge your marriage with practical tips, wisdom, and inspiration for every stage of marriage. And don't forget, become a rock-solid partner and receive the Dream Marriage Library. There's a rock-solid partner level to fit every need.
This program is made possible by the generous support of our faithful partners.